Forget the four kings, I am the emperor. Not my words, those of George Kambosos. After his upset win over Teofimo Lopez in New York, he had Lopez down in the first round, down himself in the 10th, but ran out a deserved split decision it was in the end, but a deserved winner. This is After the Bell, Mirror Fighting's boxing show, with me, Martin Domin, with Barry Jones, and with Declan Taylor. As I said, George Kambosos is now the unified lightweight champion. Teofimo Lopez came out very, very fast. As he said he would, he wanted that first round stoppage, but ended up on the canvas himself. Came into the fight perhaps towards the end, but then when he had Kambosos down in the 10th, then lost, I think, the 11th and 12th. But it feels like a fight. One man got his tactics right, one man got his tactics wrong.
Yeah, it's sort of easy to say because we know these things are an issue that Teofimo was struggling for the weight and has been for a long time, as well as this was a fight that he probably overlooked because we all did. Let's be honest, we really did, because Kambosos have shown nothing. Though he looked solid, nothing exceptional in anything that he's done that we've seen. But I think that's the easy way out. I think Kambosos was brilliant, and Teofimo. I think the biggest issue was he couldn't hurt Kambosos early. That was the biggest. He was catching him with shots that would normally, if not knock someone out or down, would make someone panic or make someone reassess what they're trying to do. And Kambosos fire back every time he got hit with a big right hand, especially in the first round. He would fire back, and I don't think that's something that Teofimo Lopez is used to. And I'm not saying he panicked, but he stopped throwing shots with full conviction for a few rounds, and that allowed Kambosos to get a run, and get a big lead going into the halfway stage, and then it was a panic there for Kambosos. For Lopez, he had to put the pressure on as much as he could, and the corner, by the way, his corner were just awful. I thought his dad he knows his son well, but I think it's sometimes when you have a precocious talent and you train him. I'm not saying you can't train a fight. I'm not saying you're not a good trainer or cornerman, but it sometimes you get exposed when he gets exposed. You get exposed with it because there was no real instruction of what he had to do at all. It was just, yeah, you get him, you'll get him. Don't worry about it. You can't stroke a guy's ego when he's getting beat. You have to go, listen, this you got to pull it out the bag here, mate. This is your life. So you got to give him the right instructions, or you're giving a motivational speech saying your life's going to change for the worse if you don't go out there and give your all. Whatever you can do, you don't just keep saying that's okay. There's no problem. You're going to get him. It was awful, but Kambosos was brilliant. Like better boxer than we thought, but the main attribute was his toughness, his chin, and his bravery to fight under pressure. Won him the fight by a street on my card.
I do want to get into both corners actually, and the sort of contrast between them. But it's often easy, Declan, to when there's an upset like this, it's very easy to sort of dwell on what Lopez did wrong rather than what Kambosos did right. But as Barry said, his chin stood up in that first round, and it almost felt like Lopez, I don't know what to do. But at the same time, Kambosos was the one who was on his jab, setting up his right hand far better than Lopez was.
Yeah, and I think that first round changed the sort of course of the fight anyway, because Lopez was sort of doing what he wanted until he got knocked down. But then thereafter, he's sort of thinking, okay, he could counter me now. And then his punch, I mean, he's not a massive, he's not a volume puncher in any way. He's very economical with his punches anyway, but they're all usually like worthwhile punching. But after he's get floored like that from basically just an overhand right counter, after that, he's sort of thinking, well, I don't want to do too much here because I could get clipped again. Even if he's not actually thinking that, just you can tell instinctively that's what he's doing. So for a lot of the middle rounds in particular, not really doing much, sort of stalking about. Like you say, Kambosos using his jab well. Also with the right hand, but he was hooking off the jab really nicely. I've never really seen him do that. And Lopez was not sort of expecting it a lot of the time. Was sort of eating 2 or 3 shots at a time, and then Kambosos was off. It was such a lovely performance, like so good to watch. And then the 10th round when he got him all over the shop, like really Kambosos, he's still throwing. I was quite not disappointed, but surprised that Lopez didn't finish him off. He had like a minute 45 or something, and he's like almost out on his feet, Kambosos, and that, what Barry said about his toughness. And then he wins the 11th round. So then at that point, I'm thinking in the 10th round, right, okay, he's got 2 rounds now to just walk through him but he didn't. And Kambosos won definitely the 11th, probably the 12th for most people. And then you think, okay, then you start thinking maybe that was the weight. That was the weight, because we talk a lot about the weight and how it impacts you. It's like, well, when you're in the 11th and 12th and you need to find an extra gear to stop someone who's ready to go, you wouldn't have it in there if you've cut like that. And I remember speaking to Lopez before Khan against Crawford in New York. Lopez boxed what's his face, the Icelandic guy. Oh, was he Finnish? The guy, the old European champion. Stopped him. Great performance. I remember speaking to him then, and he was like, "I'm not hanging around at lightweight. I want to win the belt." And then he beat Commie, and then he wants to move up. So that's like 4 years or 3 years ago that he's talking about not being able to do this weight anymore. So he's clearly hung around a bit too long, and I think it did have an effect on him. But you just have to, like, the performance from Kambosos. It's all well and good having someone who's struggled at the weight. Everyone struggles at the weight, but it's about how you pick them apart. And it was such a good performance. And I said about the best performances of active fighters out there. You think about Fury, Wilder, Klitschko, even like Ruiz, Joshua. Like, this is right up there as one of the best wins of any active fighter right now. It was incredible, biggest win in Australian history by a mile, and that's including like Jeff Fenech and Costa Jew, and that's a great. Daniel Gill won a middleweight title. There were some great wins over the years. That is straight in there. Going to New York, beating pound for pound undefeated champion for all the belts. It was just, that's why we love the sport. That last night, if you could bottle it and say what people say, why do you love this sport? It's such a mess most of the times. That is exactly why last night.
I know it's hard to sort of think about what Teofimo Lopez is thinking, and you're right about the corner has an impact, but he's come out at the end of the fight and said, he said I won it 11-2, and then realised he'd gone 13 rounds and changed it to 10-2. But surely in that fight, he must realise at some point that it's not working, and he doesn't change it.
Well, you should know yourself, even if you think you're winning round or they're close. I didn't see that. If that's how you feel, the fact that you think it's close means you should be like pushing it as much as you can. But that's where you rely on your corner, because sometimes when you're in it, immersed in it, you can't really see, especially when no one's being massively dominant, then you can't really see how, if you're winning or losing around sometimes. But you always tend to think, I should do more because I don't feel like I've done enough to guarantee I've won it. Your corner needs to be honest then and say, listen, that's not enough. It's okay being the early doors to be, listen, it's okay, it worked, you got the plan, you got the power. But at some point, the corner has to say, this isn't enough. You're going to lose everything. Listen, Angelo Dundee, you're blowing it, son, against, for Leonard against Hearns. There's been so many things that that motivational speaks that have changed the course of fights, and I think you need that experience and that really good level-headedness in the corner to give you the truth at times. It's not all about just being supremely confident with what you're doing and no negative thoughts. You have to go, listen, this is not enough. You got to lose. Let's go home if you're not going to try. He was trying. I think he's used to being the bully all the time, and it didn't work there, and it always works because he's brilliant. But as we found out now, he's brilliant when he's allowed to be brilliant, and Kambosos never allowed him that. And I think that now gives an opening or a vision for other fighters. I think actually, when you fire, if you can take a shot, which still is, you still got to take it, by the way. But if you can, and you fire every time he throws, he can set himself for the next big shot. He struggles a bit. It was, I think I would say with Declan, it was literally what you love about boxing. No one gave Kambosos a chance. Nobody. Not even his dad, really. Let's be honest. No, you think it's a chance of a lifetime for your son. You take it. And he deserved the opportunity because he worked his way. He worked for the rankings, did the right thing. He beat Selby for the eliminator, did everything asked of him. But you still thought this is one of those level fights where he's going to get. Listen, we weren't talking about winning the fight. We were saying, can he go the distance? Can he go past 6 rounds? And that's a success for Kambosos. That's how much of an underdog he was, and he proved anything but. He was fantastic. He boxed so well. Forget about the energy and the chin. That's what won him the fight. His focus, and they planned, like I said, hooking off the jab, things that you haven't really seen him do, but he obviously worked very well against Lopez. They did their due diligence for that fight, and it paid off. It paid off so much, and he was just gracious in victory. He was just everything you want from a champion on Saturday night. And
you wonder, on the other hand, whether Lopez and their team did the due diligence and they thought they were going to turn up and win. And like, you're right there. That when it's going wrong, like the fact that he thinks he won 10 rounds, like when you really think about that, that means he's so deep in it that he doesn't have any idea of what's going on in the fight, really. So he needs his corner to be able to tell him. It reminds me slightly, not quite as extreme, but when Frampton boxed Scott Quigg, and Gallagher thought that Quigg had won like the first 6 rounds or something. So then there was no change of pace. There was no, like, this is an emergency now. We need to change it. We need to get on top of this because we're losing. It was like, oh, I thought we were winning, sort of thing. And I think that's what was the undoing of them. And then in the other corner, they're like, right, okay, this is the plan. This is what we're doing. And we're boxing well. We do that, like just clear instructions rather than just like go out and get him now. You know, that it's not really going to work. But it's a hard one to have a go at the dad. He seems like an obvious sort of, what would you call it, like a conducting rod of the hate and the like the sort of blame. But he's an easy one. He's an easy target when you look at last night.
But that's what he is. That's his role. He's the angel.
Yeah.
He's today's Angel Garcia, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
Dad, you know, they act the goat or whatever they want to do. To it looks like they're trying to steal the limelight and get the 10, 15 minutes of fame. And it is a little bit like that. It's a bit of an ego trip, but it's also to deflect the attention away from their son. So their son could theoretically, as Angel did with Danny, acted an idiot and got more press than Danny in the build-up for fights. But then Danny didn't, could go about his training and not worry about all the crap for promoting the fight. That's pretty, and it sort of worked for him. And maybe Teofimo's father tries to do the same thing. But then with that, when you don't do your job in the corner, which he don't think he did, in my opinion, then you need to take some criticism with it, because you put yourself on the pedestal. You put yourself out there, saying I'm the best. My son's the best. And then you go, well, he's a mega talent, and we all thought he was the best. But on Saturday, he clearly wasn't the best, and it wasn't a close fight for me. I think there was only one winner. I think that the only surprise for Kambosos winning was the score for Lopez.
Yeah.
How could you score that fight for Lopez? I couldn't see it.
That's the worry, that nobody in the corner or in that team is going to accept this defeat. And it was a bit like when Yard lost against Lyndon Arthur. You need someone to be like, no, we lost. This is why, and this is what we need to address, rather than like, no, we definitely won this fight. Like this is a robbery or whatever. You need to accept it, and then you can build from it.
It's a real feature actually of DAZN. I mean, I guess because of the model they have, that you can hear in the corner instead of us going to a Voltarol advert every time. You can actually, they went straight to the corner, listened to the one, and listened to the other in the next round. But and I know it is maybe difficult for us to criticise corners, but after the first round, Lopez Senior tells him to calm down, but also tells him to try and knock him out. A lot of the time, he seemed to be late to the corner. He seemed to take a few seconds.
I noticed that. There was one. The one, I think it was the 10th, must have been when he dropped him. Lopez is like meandering back to the corner. You could see the old man like still on the floor, like cheering. I'm like, you need to be in there like now. Like the minute started. It was bizarre. You're so right. I'm so glad I wasn't the only one who spotted that. It was weird.
And even just things like, I think they were both cut at one point, but like the difference in how they just didn't seem professional almost. Whereas you've got Kambosos, you've got proper instructions. I think it was Shane McGuigan once said, you can only, or David Hay, I think maybe said, you only want to hear one thing in the corner, or maybe two things. That's all you want to hear in between rounds, because you've got a minute, probably 50 seconds. You're obviously deep in the fight. You only want to hear a couple of things. Do this, don't do that. Instead of just someone shouting, yeah, you're winning, you're fine. It's just simple instructions. And really, dad or no dad, that should be what's happening.
See, the protocol for going back to the corner should be, you get your fighter sat down, get his legs out, make sure there's no panic or nothing. Even if there was a panic and wrong, there's no panic initially. So it's just for that first 10 seconds, it's 15 seconds, because it takes him 5 to get back to the corner. It's nothing. Just get down. There you go. Give him a bit of water, or check, or get the guy working on a cut, if he has anything like that, and then you go and tell him stuff. Not all this like. There's sometimes they're talking before he gets back to the corner. Right, you got to be this. It's hard to digest anything, because you've got your own thought process going on, by the way, and there's a million things coming in. You're panicking about this. If it's a close fight, you're losing, or you're hurt, or you're knackered. All these things into play. Plus, you have to try and think logical about what's going on, and then you don't go back, just go right. I'll listen to them and do what I'm told. You have to be told a couple of things, as David Hay, he's right, just a couple of things, and then you digest that, or you don't. You don't always do, but one thing might click in your head and you go, yeah, that's right. Because ultimately, that's why all the training is important and tactics, loose tactics are important, because what you do in the gym will stay with you in the head. What you're told on the night won't always stay with you. It has to be a muscle memory type scenario. So when they say something, it clicks sometimes if it feels right for you. A lot of things you're told in the corner, you almost ignore. And fighters, whether they admit that or not, that's the truth. And you don't purposely ignore it. You just can't digest all the information because you've got your own thing going on as well. So it is two clear instructions. But first of all, you may get the fighter calm in the corner, make sure he's okay, and then the last sort of 30 seconds is the instructions just before he goes back. That's what it should be, I would think. And yeah, but all this. At one point, he was stood up, which is fine. The guy's trying to do the cut. He's moving around. He gave up in the end. The cutsman. He just went off. Like
the cut.
I can't.
The cut
I think it was like 11th round, round to go.
Yeah.
I think that was. But still, like, he wants to try and do the best he can, and he wouldn't then do his job because he got his back to his dad. The one guy's on the outside of the ring. His dad's behind him. His dad's talking. The other guy's trying to give him water on this side, and the guy's trying to do the cut on the other side. So he's going, listening to his dad, having a drink, and the other guy's this side trying to do his cut. It was just ludicrous. Like, it was just mayhem. But they live on mayhem. And I think it's worked for them because but it doesn't work when things are not going your way. When everything's going your way, you can do somersaults and your father could jump on the ropes going, we're the kings of the world. And it's all funny and it's fine and it's brilliant. And you go, they work. They whatever they do, it works for them. But when things are not working, it just looks, you all of a sudden, you get exposed a little bit where's your professionalism? And I don't mean about training. They trained hard for the fight. Of course they have. Weight's an issue, but they've trained. And they've mentally overlooked him because we all did. There was a fight he was going to walk through him. And to be honest, we all, if you didn't think he was going to walk through Kambosos, you're lying. That's the truth. But in the ring, the actual on the night, they weren't the most professional outfit. That didn't lose him the fight, mind, but it could have helped him. Now, if they would have said after round 4, listen, you're picking your punches, trying to knock him out, you got to be busy because this guy can take a shot. You got to work him. You got to be busy, and he couldn't.
Refreshingly, I mean, it was a mandatory defence. There is no rematch clause, so we don't have to assume that it will happen again. Kambosos, I mean, he's obviously in America, and we have Devin Haney, Jojo Diaz in Vegas next weekend. He's talked about going there to be ringside. That seems like, I can't imagine that would be a difficult fight to make.
No, should it be? I think it is refreshing because he'll just go in there and he'll fight anyone and he'll happy to get paid and he's got the belts and it's nice, isn't it? Because we were looking at those 4 and being like, well, they're never going to fight each other, so why do we even talk about it? But I think he's just the wild card, isn't he? And he's so good to watch, so entertaining, such a great character. I think it's great. I think they were talking about, Hearn said that Haney was going to box Garcia, was it? They were finally going to make one of those fights if they both win. But, I mean, it's all hypothetical. But I think we've got someone in Kambosos that is just going to be, I'll fight whoever. And obviously he has all those belts. So any of them, like Haney or whatever, I mean, that's not a foregone conclusion, by the way, against Diaz. That's a great fight as well. So any of them guys are going to look at him and think, okay, he beat Lopez. He's better than we thought, but I still fancy him winning and getting all those belts, sort of thing. So, yeah, and he's one of them. Like, I always try and gauge it on, the day after the fight. If you're excited about watching him fight again, I always think he's made an impact. And I remember thinking that about George Groves when he lost the first fight against Frotch. He was like, he lost, but I'm desperate to see him again. I want to see this guy fight again. The same with Kambosos. Like, can't wait for him to box again. So it's so nice in a division that we've talked about a lot, but we all were cynical about it, just to have someone who's in there and ready to do the business. And he's going to get paid well for it as well, and he's going to make a fortune.
I think the pay is important. I think the pay is why I think if he doesn't fight Devin Haney next, then there's something wrong. Because I think the Kambosos thing was always the Lopez thing was always an issue. Who wanted, it was going to be the A side who wanted the biggest money, and we all thought Lopez was the A side, but Haney would have thought differently, and I think that was going to always be a difficult fight to make, but makeable. But I think Kambosos now, though he got paid well last night, he's not going to demand the same amount as Lopez is. I wouldn't have thought, and if he does, then he's stupid. But so that's why I think the Haney fight would be an easier fight to make now. And this, if I was, you can see everyone have fancied beating Kambosos, by the way, because again, he was fantastic, but he doesn't have. No, he has a great chin, but he got hurt later on. He has. He looks like he hits hard, but he doesn't like he's a devastating puncher. But every time, like Lopez looked up until the other night. So you tend to think, Haney could look at him and say, "I'll just dance rings around him. I won't hold my feet like Lopez. But I would be charging at him. I'll be doing a little bit more what Lee Selby type fights sort of did, but better with a bit more aggression. And so you can see why he thinks. But then he's a hard man to deter. We've seen that already a couple of times, certainly last night. But I think that fight should be easy to make. And if it's not, if they can make that fight, then I think the camps, whoever the promoter, their camps are not doing their jobs, because we can get it. We've never been closer to a unified lightweight champion of the world than we are right now. To making that fight, to making a unified champion of the world, that should be the next fight. I can't see what stops it now, unless Haney gets beaten. Well, even if Haney gets beaten, Diaz wins, it should be easy to make again. Yeah,
it's his problem now. Kambosos, he's never going to get overlooked again, is he? It's a bit like remember Michu, the Swansea striker, turned up, scored every week, and because no one heard of him, no one knew who he was, and then about 3 months later, they're like, okay, this guy's good, and he gets marked, can't score again. So nobody's going to overlook Kambosos again, and that like Devin Haney, and I think whether anyone admits it, Lopez and the whole team probably thought this is easy work, and also he's made for me. This is fine. I'm already thinking about what I'm going to do after. It ain't going to happen again with Kambosos, particularly because he's got all the belts. Someone like Haney is going to be like, no, I know what he does now. I know all of his strengths. I've seen him with my own eyes now, and this is how I beat him. And I think that will be a problem for him.
And in terms of Lopez, given the weight situation, and obviously he's not going to hang around at lightweight to have another couple of fights to get another title shot, is he? Presumably now he does make that move up.
Yeah, he got to. He should have anyway. But the problem is now he moves up with no guarantee he gets a shot at Josh Taylor, because he doesn't have. I think the WBO make you automatically mandatory if you move up, being a champion from the weight below. But now he's not a champion no more. Then he goes in high in all the ratings, you would feel, but still has to prove himself. So maybe he needs that to get a warmer fight now before. So that sort of not stagnates his career, but that keeps him, maybe a 12-month away or longer from getting that shot at the world title, unless of course Taylor gets beat or the titles get fragmented. Which is probably what's going to happen more than anything, is that Taylor's not going to be able to keep all those belts if Taylor can stay at the weight, because he's another guy who's massive for the weight, and you think he might. We want to move to welterweight soon. So Lopez will get a shot at a world title above, and I think he'll be just as good as he was at lightweight. And he'd be a great addition to another fantastic division at super light. I call it light welter, but it's super lightweight, isn't it? It's super lightweight too. He's a great addition. And he's just, you don't become a bad fighter overnight at his age. You don't. You got to expose a little bit about, you just can't dine out on your power and your athleticism. You have to go in there with a proper plan. You have to be diligent mentally, not just physically. So I think he would have learned from that more than anything else, and it'll be an awakening for him that he's not indestructible. I think some people, especially US-based fighters, they once they get to a level and they're not getting beat, they generally think we all go into a fight thinking we're going to win, and the great fighters go into the fight thinking they can never lose, but they train like they can. And I think he's probably never, even though he trains hard, he probably never trained like he can lose. But now he knows he can. So that'll be a different mindset for him back in the gym. Because everything will have to be spot on. Not just going through the motions, not just thinking, if I just turn up the best I am, if I just turn up in shape, I can beat anyone. You got to go in there going, I can beat anyone for turning up in shape, but I got to leave no stone unturned. I got to study him, got to get right. The camp's got to get right. He's the boss of his company, by the way. So he's got to make sure everyone, including his dad, gets it right for him. And maybe they have to bring someone in to be more of a structure to the corner, certainly. Not so much the training camp. I don't know what else I'd like, but the corner needs more structure. I feel that with a calmer head in the corner and a bit more structure, he might have made that a little bit closer. Maybe. If it was in him, by the way, but who knows? But yeah, I think he might have been able to make that a little bit more of a closer fight than it was. because I never had it remotely close at all. I thought Kambosos was outworking him, outboxing him, outthinking him. Yeah.
I think he's going to be better at a weight up. I think he spent too long killing himself, particularly at a young age as well. So his body's desperate to develop and it hasn't really been allowed to. I think that extra, 5 pounds is going to make a massive difference. He's going to retain, if not retain his power, I think he'll be more powerful. He's going to be stronger and bigger. I think the fight to make is Regis Prograis. I think it's a massive fight. Ooh. And then the winner moves on to maybe Taylor or whoever, wherever the belts are. That was another thing, though, that did my head in a bit last week, is the dad's sort of big outburst at Josh Taylor. It's like there's just this total lack of respect. You know, you just go around telling everyone that they're scared of his son. It's like, well, no, he's not scared. Like, there's no thought to any of it. And I think it would be a massive fight down the line, but I think the Prograis fight would be a great. I mean, it's beyond the sort of testing the water fight that way. It's a proper test. I mean, another great fighter. So then the winner of that would be more than worthy for a crack at Taylor.
He's not going to fight Prograis unless it's for a world title. And I don't think Prograis will fight him unless it's for a world title or silly money. Because that is a world title fight. You know, Prograis is world championship material all day long. You know, he really is. And if it wasn't for the chat that Ramirez had 2 titles and Josh had 2 when he beat him, then he'd be a world champion. I would have boxed for one of them. If they only had one, if Taylor and Ramirez only had 1 title each, there'd be 2 spare, and Prograis would have won a title again. I'm pretty sure of that. So he's probably the 3rd best fighter in the division, isn't he? So unless he moves up again as well, who knows? But I think it all depends on Taylor moving up. But I think he'll want to test. I was going to say Cepeda, but then that's another fight which should be for a while. It's a hard division there, but you need to get a good test. Because now he's not going to be guaranteed a shot at the champion. But the test that he needs might be too hard a test. I'm not saying he can't beat them guys. Of course, he's good enough to beat anyone, but they might be too hard a tests for what the reward is. You still need to call yourself a world champion again. I think that's what he'd be focusing on. I think he'd get, because before last night, he was guaranteed a title shot wherever he went because he was one of the stars of world boxing, and now he's not one of the stars of world boxing right now. You know, that's just the truth of it, isn't it? You know how he's been beat. He comes there with a name, but a little bit tarnished now, and also he doesn't have that bargaining chip of being a champion moving up or staying at lightweight, and he has nothing to offer except his name and his ability. So it makes it more difficult for him. So it's a little bit of humble pie being eaten for him, but I don't think that's a bad thing in the longevity. He's a young kid with still a fantastic career ahead of him. He can do loads in either division, but I think what Deck's saying is right. I think he needs to move up to be truly effective. I think he'd be a better fighter at super lightweight, and it's not a bad division, is it? He's going from one great division to maybe an even better one.
I think the problem we've got here is that I don't think we're going to see anyone want to fight on DAZN anymore because it's the absolute graveyard of champions, isn't it? If you've got a belt, if you're a favourite, stay away from DAZN. Speak to Triller, speak to Sky, whoever it is, BT, don't care. Just stay off DAZN if you want to keep your belt, if you don't want to get upset. Because this year has been unbelievable on DAZN. And you've got to take your hat off to Eddie Hearn, because it's obviously because, this one, it sort of fell into his lap, but he did bid big. But some of the upsets on DAZN this year have been ridiculous. And you would usually say upset of the year, but you have to really give it some thought, actually, because even how big it was last night, it probably wasn't the upset of the year, even now. So what a year it's been.
Indeed. One king dethroned, another one in action next weekend in Devin Haney against Jojo Diaz in Las Vegas. Do join us then to look back at that one on DAZN. So who knows what's going to happen. Until then, do take care.